Welcome to Chronic Curiosity, where we have real conversations with real people, from everything to anything, in attempts to facilitate dialogue with our fellow humans, and hopefully your curiosity as well as ours. If you can withstand the show, we ask, most importantly, that you tell your friends and family, but also you can pick up some merch or just donate to the show at chronic-curiosity.com in USD or Bitcoin. If you feel so obliged, you can give us a good rating and follow on whatever podcast platform you so choose. But please feel free to reach out to us on the website or the socials, which can also be found on the website, chronic-curiosity.com. And here we go.
It doesn't quite sound the same as over there for some reason.
No?
So, but it could just be, I don't know, maybe all the mics the exact same.
Maybe it's your beard getting in the way of
possibly
the sound waves.
It's like a dampening material.
It's dampening your entire head.
It's too much insulation.
Yes, it's exactly that's what's happening.
Everyone's like, dude, how do you rock that beard when it's so warm out? And I'm like, well, it's like insulation. You just kind of keep it cool and you don't get super hot, and then it never becomes hot and holds it in. It goes both ways. It's like fiber.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You're insulating your face.
There you go.
Yeah, but once you get hot, then it takes a while to cool down.
Oh, it can. It can.
Like an internal air conditioner.
You just got to meditate a little bit.
Meditate. Lower your body temperature.
Mm-hmm. Do some Wim Hof breathing.
Yeah, that's the guy. Wasn't that the one they did the studies on where he could like adjust the temperature in his like different hands and stuff?
Yeah.
That's so weird. There's something there, right?
Probably.
Wait, what's there?
He's an alien.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
You think so?
No.
Maybe. I just
he's just a simulation character that someone won a lot of tokens and they could it's like adding various guns and things he can do, powers.
I'm telling you, man, I've talked to there's more and more
I know.
There's more and more people that are like, you know what, this whole simulation thing's starting to make a lot more sense in real life. It's possible. I don't know. I mean, theoretically. I just saw a thing. I don't know if you ever saw the theory that the moon is a hollow spaceship.
I saw Chad send that, and I was like, I don't have time to launch down this rabbit hole of nonsense.
Yeah, I didn't launch down the rabbit hole, but it was just a fairly short video. But it was actually fairly well done. It was basically a guy looked like I heard this theory, and it sounded like obviously ridiculous. He's like, I did some like research into the things. And he's like, I just have more questions now than I did before.
True,
because the moon is a weird weird one.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's isn't it the Death Star? Is that the Star Wars thing that looks like the moon?
I don't know.
I'm not a Star Wars person.
Me either.
Have you ever watched any of them?
Yeah, I think I've actually seen all of them except the most recent one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have a it's probably worth some money actually. I have a record someone gave me when I was a kid, and it's in like mint condition.
Like soundtrack or something?
Yeah.
The sound, which to start like the first Star Wars?
Yeah, I think so.
Dude, that's it probably is worth some money.
Probably.
Is it still sealed? I'm assuming it's not sealed.
I don't know. I'd have to look into that.
That's neat.
Yeah, we had some things back in the day that were probably worth. Like my dad had it's obviously a replica of a Stradivarius violin, and I don't know what he even did with it. Even the replicas sometimes were worth a little bit of money.
Yeah, I have a guitar that's not exactly a replica, but it's a ripoff of the Gibson Hummingbird, the guitar that Elvis used to play. I remember was it Ventura made them, and they totally ripped it off. They actually got sued. They only made them for like a year or two, and then Gibson, I think, sued them back in like the 80s. And I have like I said, on the replicas.
I like the rip-off.
A rip-off, but it actually sounds really good. But I remember the bridge was breaking off? It was like peeling off the guitar.
Oh.
So I took it somewhere, and I'm like, hey, I want to get this thing fixed. I was so pissed. The guy goes, well, he's like, this guitar is basically worthless. He's like, what? he's like, you're better off to I'll just throw it in the dumpster for you. You can buy a new one.
Yeah, cool.
And I was like,
didn't ask for your opinion. Maybe it has some sentimental value. If you don't want to fix it, that's fantastic. Otherwise, give it back to me and I'll find someone else, or shut your mouth, fix it, take my money.
Yeah, literally. I was like, yeah, you can just give it back to me. I'll find somebody else to do it and I'll never be back here. Thanks. And I just laughed. Like, what? And I found a guy that he was like, well, he's like, you know, he's like, if, he's like, I can try.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not in great shape because it hasn't been stored well. Cause I think I discovered it was like from 84.
Okay.
So it's older than I am. So I'm like, and it's neat cause it's like, you know, just the story
the nostalgia,
behind it.
yeah.
In the fact that it's older than I am and it still plays. I was like, found a guy. He's like, oh, I'll try, but no promises. I said, hey,
that's all I'm asking.
That's all I'm asking. So yeah, but it blew my mind. The guy was like, this is basically worthless. You should just throw it away. Like,
yeah, I feel like that's
get the fuck out of here.
It's an interesting sentiment that some of the world carries with things that they would think are worthless or useless, but they aren't to others, or they add value.
Yeah, well, especially even somebody in that field. Like if it was like, if I told somebody like, hey, this guitar, like, or if they wanted to buy it, or if I wanted to try to sell it, and it was like, well, that's a ripoff. It's falling apart. It's basically kind of broken. I could see somebody be like, well, why don't you just throw it away?
Yeah.
But like a guitar person, like an actual, like I took it to like a guitar person, and like they didn't even understand that small little twinge of, oh, like there might be some sentimental value here, or just that, like the story behind it, like some kind of need.
But I mean, maybe that's a different mindset when you're running a business, though. You're not looking at the value in things other than the value and return on interest for money. It's not.
But that's a hell of a business just to get into, like just for business. Like, because there ain't no way some dude running a guitar shop makes a shit ton of money.
Yeah, but how do you know he didn't get jaded somewhere along the way, or lost his passion, or you know? And I guess like that value thing, man, it really had me thinking the other day with the whole student loan kind of thing. You know, I see like a lot of posts that people put up, and they're like, well, you know, these people are taking on these loans for jobs that don't offer value. And I'm like, that's an interesting concept to think of, like who's got the ultimate say on what is valuable and what is not. And I started to really think about that, because they were like doctors, lawyers, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, but I was like, man, I don't feel like you can have a well-rounded society if all you had was the STEM stuff. Like there needs to be culture, there needs to be art. And I was thinking, like, how do they know that some of the inspiration for designing certain instruments didn't come from someone who had a great art teacher? Or and when I say instruments, I mean like medical instruments. Or, you know, how do we know that you know, a certain theory in physics didn't come from, you know, something in art where you had to do a project and you saw molecules, or you saw the way that, you know, hydrophobic substances didn't coalesce together. Like I just think I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. It was just interesting that someone would have such a definitive add value. And I know now we're getting nuanced, because we're going into, well, you know, you took the loan, like you definitely need to pay for it. It was something you need to be responsible for. And then there's many more layers of how well educated were they. So I don't know, man. What are your thoughts?
No, I haven't really heard that one, which makes sense to me though, because like most of the stuff most of it's like, hey, look, like you hear the arguments of, hey, why should taxpayers? I am. Okay, I'll talk louder. Is that better? Like why are like taxpayers who didn't go to college or paid off their college like loans or whatever the scenario be, like why are they getting foot of the bill? Like obviously that's a pretty valid argument, I think. And then the other one I've heard is like, hey, like maybe you should be like the people that maybe you didn't get your loan, like some of your loan knocked off, but like, hey, be happy for your families or friends, or like people like, okay, I get that too. I like that's cool. Like we've talked about like during COVID, the stimulus stuff.
Sure.
Like, all right, like if you're going to send me money, like what am I supposed to do? Like try to figure out how to send the US government like their stimulus like back to them. Like I get it. Like I'm not asking people like to not, I'm not like, it's not necessarily like I disagree with or like look at you differently because you took the handout, because the government's like, here you go, take it. And it's like, well, it's going to be more work for me to like try to give it back to them or not. But the problem I have is like all those people that look at one specific thing. These like, oh, these, what do you mean? How do you know these degrees aren't value? They don't have value, like in any way, shape, or form. Like that's a silly argument, I think, because like, well, like you said, like whether
how do you measure that?
Yeah,
like
you can't measure.
That's
you
kind
can't
of a
measure
qualitative.
That. Yeah, and it's like if that's the person's like.
I mean, you probably could measure it to a degree.
You could put quantifiers on it.
Sure,
but does it matter? Like, I know, like we've talked about before, with the whole medical field. Like, oh, if you weren't a doctor, like you're out there getting this liberal arts degree, this, that, whatever. Well, some of our doctors, like, maybe they should go back and try to get another one because, like,
or learn some like communications or compassion in the best manner.
Yeah, something. So it's like just because like we put these values on these specific like degrees or jobs, like why, that argument absolutely makes sense to me. But
so this is maybe a dumb question, but everybody who is for student loans, the help out or the payout or erasing loans, they don't talk about the taxes that everybody else is going to have to.
Right.
What do you mean? Congress said that it wasn't going to raise taxes.
So that's my question is that like set in stone that if these student loans are getting erased, 100% people in a certain working class or, tax bracket are going to have increased taxes? And what does that look like? Because everybody who's for the erasing of student loans, they're not talking about that. But everybody that's against it, they're absolutely talking about that. So what is there like a black and white of this is how much your taxes are going to be raised?
Yeah, so that's the hard
because
part.
Like everyone's arguing about this thing that's going to happen regardless of, our say.
Right.
But how do we know how that's actually going to affect? Because if nobody has to pay more taxes, I don't care who gets it, right?
I saw this argument on Facebook and I was crying laughing because this dude was like, well, Congress said they're gonna, it's not gonna affect anyone's taxes. And the other guy was like, are you kidding me right now? He was like, dude, it will absolutely affect taxes in some way, shape, or form. It may not be a direct tax, like, hey, here's 1% more. And he was like, but if we print more money and there's more inflation, he was like, dude, we're paying for that. He said, either way, at the end of the day, like everyone will have to pay for it somehow, or everyone who works and pays taxes,
right,
who's not subsidized will have to pay for it. And I don't know that there's a clear path as to how that's going to happen, but it'll happen. I mean, you can't just, the one guy was like, it's not Candyland. You can't just print money out of thin air, or you can't just pull ideas and not think someone's going to have to pay for it.
Right. And that's the point. Like, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so then the second thought is, are we just going to do this again in 5 years, 10 years? Like,
so
where's like the base point? Like if these student loans are so fucked up and they prey on 16 through 21-year-olds and no one's getting education on what this loan is actually going to look like and how much you're actually going to be paying over the next 20, 30, 40 years. If no one is educating them, like, is it really their fault? Like, does that fall on the teachers? Does that fall on the parents? So like, why are we still making student loans an option if they're so fucked up and we're in this problem?
Yeah, so I'll get back to that one, but I'll address your first one first. So that's the problem I have with the entire argument is, like I do with a lot of arguments, that people, they pick one thing and they say, like, hey, this is good, this is bad, this is why. Well, we so often lose all the complexity and how all of these things are tied together. Mm-hmm. Like I've said it 1,000 times, you don't like politics, you don't want to get involved, this, that, whatever. Well, guess what? You're already involved. Do you live in a country where there's a government? Yes. That means you're involved in politics, period. You may not like it. You may not think you are. Your taxes, all of the decisions that the government, like, directly, most people say indirectly, but really eventually it's always affecting you, how much you're paying in taxes. Like how much, I won't ask you, Tony, but how much of your paycheck goes to the government? A lot. Like it's, whether it be local, city, like I've said, like they killed me when I realized during like the pandemic, I wasn't going to my office anymore, which is outside of where I'm at.
Yeah.
I paid a city taxes because that's where my company is located, more than what I paid for my kids' school and taxes. That like, obviously, so like, and I wasn't there for 2 years. I was paying taxes to a place that I like wasn't at. So like all these little things, they add up, and nobody ever looks at, like I said, like this money has to come from somewhere, right? You can't just say, hey, poof, you know what, $10,000 of your student debt is just gone. Well, somebody, like there's a path for that. There's a trail for that. So where does it come from? Somebody's got to pay for it, right? Like, and that's what always bugs me about like when people get in these arguments. It's like, look, like I get it. There's things to like be upset about, but what you're doing right now, you're not really having an argument. You're just saying, this is my opinion and this is why. So like a lot of people get in arguments, and I mean that in like the actual term, right? Not like, hey, like screaming at each other, but like an actual argument where two sides are, giving
debate.
There's some debate. This is why, there's blah, blah, whatever. But most of the time when people are having arguments, especially on social media, like no one's actually ever like talking about like all of the underlying factors to it. It's just Biden inflation, and he's destroying our nation, and all, like he's just printing money, like, and he's stupid and old, and he is a kid sniffer, and it's, well, Trump is this and that, and he like, okay, like we need to start like taking away those little top level things and like actually looking at, well, except where's this money coming from? Like how does, if you just like say, all right, everyone, $10,000 off your student debt. Okay, great. Well, who's paying for that? Someone's got to, right? Like it's not. And it brings me back to, well, it's been almost 2 years now. Actually, it's probably right around 2 years we've been doing this. Because it was, well, maybe it's probably over now. Because it was mid 2020, right? And for a bunch of dumb apes or whatever we are, talking about printing out money and inflation then. And I'm not an economist, but
that was a conversation we had. I said, you don't need to be an economist. Yeah. You just need to have a tiny, tiny amount of common sense.
Yeah. Well, that's what kills me. It's like, how do people, and even in the last, 6 months, we've gone from inflation is transitory to, well, it was Russia's fault, to like all these other things. And now we just keep on printing money. Like, I don't even know how much we've given to, I mean, like I said, we had the Ukraine discussion.
There's still a war there?
Yeah, there's still a war there.
I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was reported on it. Went from that to abortion to this to what's the next thing to?
Yeah. But like we've given, I think we're up to like
80 or more.
It's well over 80 billion, I think.
Like in the,
I think it's triple digits, I think, or whatever it would be now. I don't know.
I was going to say, do we really know how much, since things were coming through the private sector, which were then probably funded in or kicked back by the government to those private sectors?
Yeah, so that's when the spider web,
government contract.
Yeah, all the webs that get woven that we just don't realize it because we go, oh, we're sending Ukraine this amount of money for this, like arms, or we're sending them arms that equal up like this amount of money, is that whatever. Like, how many other things are we doing? Like, what the military budget grows continuously every year, and it's like I want to say it's like $500 billion a year or something like that at this point.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. But I remember talking about when we first started talking about the Fred tracker. It's the Federal Reserve. I don't know. Brain's not working that well today, but it's like talking about how much money's been printed.
Yeah,
recently.
Because I mean, we're what are we, over 7 trillion?
It's, would it be right now whoa, what happened? That's weird. Yeah. So currency in circulation right now is, so be $2.2 trillion in circulation. I think that's what that is. 2,200 billion. But so in that, what's that? That goes back to 2002 right there. So we started, it was at 600 billion, and now we're at 2,200 20 years later. So that's almost 4 times the amount in 20 years. And we've been a country for what? Not quite 300,
yeah.
250. That's not good, right? So it's like that. Like when you look at like little stuff like that, it's what we talk about, supply and demand, all these things. Like what, the flow and what is the? I just lost it. Obviously supply and demand, but it's like the amount. If there's no finite amount, then we're just going to keep on printing money until we end up like, what was it? It was just all country. Was it not Lebanon?
It just crashed.
Yeah, I know Libya's I mean, we don't talk about that either. That's a whole different thing for a different day. But there's
plenty of things we don't talk about.
It's insane. But like there's some countries around the world that's like their inflation is really like triple digits, like hundreds and hundreds of percents. They just can't get, like, nobody can buy food. Like their currency is just worthless now, completely worthless. So it's like, we've talked about that, but yeah, it's, I don't see how continuing to spend money. And I know like they play with the numbers, because I had a conversation about the student loan debt thing where it was like, or no, it was the IRS thing, how that bill got passed where it was like, I can't remember how much money the IRS budget has increased by, but it was like one of the hot topics is like, oh, it's 87,000 agents, which is more than what they have now. So like, they're like, oh, it's doubling, but well, it's over 10 years. And, really half of the IRS workforce is looking to retire within then, but that's still like an additional like 25,000 IRS agents that are going to be hired in the next 10 years. So we'll grow the IRS by over like 50%.
Taxes to take more taxes.
Yeah, it's like we could quit spending all this money.
Is that a self-licking ice cream cone? Is that what that
is? Yeah. Well, it's like I love that somebody else I heard somebody had the argument to like, well, the IRS is like basically the only government agency that like brings in revenue. Well, no, it doesn't bring in revenue. It just takes yours. We forget that like everything that the government has it's ours. Yeah. It's ours. So
yeah, I saw several people's like, they were like, dude, there should just be a giant concerted effort to stop paying taxes for a certain period of time. Or
I wonder what would happen.
Oh, I would imagine things would collapse.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're well on our way there anyways, but
true.
It'll be interesting. Yeah, it's been a lot of weird. We haven't done this, us just hanging out and recapping things in a long time. There's been a lot. It's been funny though, because we've come full circle with all, like, we've talked about inflation and all these different things and like COVID and like all the things we talked about 2 years ago that were like, hey, this is weird. And now 2 years later, it's like all these things that like, all the things it was like taboo to talk about 2 years ago, like come true. Maybe not all of them. There's some QAnon stuff in there. but you know what I mean? Like a lot of these things where you're like, oh, you're not allowed, like the vaccines and all these things. And like, I love it. I saw like a year ago, I think it was a year ago, they had like Biden up there like, if you get the vaccine, you're not going to get COVID. It's not going to like, well, see how that turned out. And now Moderna is suing the other vaccine companies. You see that? Like,
oh no.
You didn't see, yeah.
No,
So
was that because they did away with the Moderna completely?
No, Moderna is suing Pfizer and BioNTech because,
okay,
for patent infringements.
I wonder what exactly, like. Oh, it's probably they're like, oh, hey, we're not making as much money as we were 6 months ago.
Yeah, but
or they didn't get on the orals, so they're like, hey, we need to recoup some money.
But like
for
that's like when you like let's like put all this whole thing in context. So you have the whole vaccine issue that happened. Now they're on shot 4, maybe 5 now in some countries. I think are doing like 5 or 6. So
why not?
Right? Why
not?
You're already rolling the dice at this point. Why not? So like you have this this company that they're suing these other drug companies for patent infringements which is funny, from like 2014. Like these patents for these mRNA vaccines that were based off of this were like created back in like 2014-ish, somewhere around there.
But not by Robert Malone.
Naturally, not by that guy, because he doesn't know what he's talking about. He is a pseudoscientist. But then, so it's like, well, and you've made all this, how much, I don't know how much money, like it's been massive. I know at one point, like I was looking at like Pfizer's profits literally doubled, and they weren't, any small fry, like doubled in the year. So it's like how you have all this stuff going on. It's like, well, now they're suing each other because like I don't know. The whole thing just seems so ridiculous and out there. Like you couldn't make it up. I feel like it's pretty wild.
Well, this article says that they're suing because they spent billions of dollars on research and everything for this mRNA technology. And it was like they're not saying they stole it, but basically like they had a patent on it, right?
Yep.
And then and then Pfizer like
created something
took
that
all of
seemed...
this that they like worked to innovate like pre-pandemic and then used it to their benefit. So that is kind of shitty if that's actually
kind of stole the base of it, if you will.
Yeah. So like that is kind of shitty. But I mean, how many people's lives did it save? So
that would be an interesting number to try to quantify as well.
Can you put a dollar amount on lives saved?
Well, how about lives lost?
That was extremely hyperbolic for anybody who doesn't understand that I'm being sarcastic.
I wanted to clarify that. I'm like, oh no, people could be like, what?
Yeah. But it's funny, like, and like if you like, I guess, and what really makes my mind trip over itself is remembering all the things that were happening, all the things that these companies were saying, all the things that the government was saying, like throughout this whole process. And it's like, your vaccine didn't fucking work anyways. Maybe for a very small, very specific subset
population. Yeah.
So it's like, what the fuck are we doing here, guys? And you realize, I think what was it? I saw something about, it was one of the, like we've talked about intelligence versus education and all these different things. Like just because somebody's in power, like doesn't automatically make them intelligent. Like, and we're realizing some of these people that are making decisions, it's like, whoa, like this is...
Hold up.
Yeah, like how did you get into that position?
Because popularity contest and
because no one else wanted it. Like because they were too busy sending rockets to the Mars and shit, like doing complicated stuff. And then when we get into a situation within our society that like we need like structure and government in a sense, like the idea of what like these government structures should be to help keep like the population like connected and tied in and like moving in one kind of general direction. So we don't just fall into complete anarchy. That's when like you realize, it's when you realize like, oh, we don't really have this thing whole set up like quite as efficient as we thought we did. Yeah. It's just a lot of those things over the past few years have been, when you look at the entire thing, it's like, oh, I see what happened now. Like, and then you have like, Zuckerberg on Rogan basically said that like I couldn't believe it. Like I listened to the clip and then I will listen to the whole thing. But Rogan just straight out asked him about censoring the Hunter Biden laptop thing.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, because he was like his Twitter like completely censored, like you couldn't share it, you couldn't anything. And they were like, yeah, well, you took a different route. But then he goes on to say that like, yeah, we didn't censor it. We just didn't censor it as much. But like they actively put it
as what?
As Twitter.
I got you.
He was like, we took a different route than Twitter, and basically like we didn't censor it as much. Like if you listen to like what he's saying, he like straight up.
So you let one story through instead of no stories through?
Yeah. We had third party fact checkers because he said that they shouldn't be the one to determine what was correct or not. So they used a third, as if that is any better.
Well, no, even worse than that though. He said that they would put it like lower down on like the feed, like
So you had the ability to influence an election.
Right, absolutely. I'm saying, but he also was like, well, and we had a third party fact checker so that Facebook shouldn't be determining what's correct. But he didn't say who this third party was and who has the ability to mark things as needing fact checked or being wrong.
Well, probably a 3-letter agency.
Yeah. Well, he admitted that too. He said the FBI basically came to them and was like, "Hey, you should probably be cautious of this story." Like, and I get it. Like, if you've ever worked in like a corporate setting, like there's things which basically all those 3-letter, they're just corporate companies at this point. Like there's a lot of things that people say in those settings that like they're not going to come out and say, "Don't run this," because they know it's going to come up someday and be like, "Well, you should be really cautious of what you're doing here, Mark. Just be cautious of this." And that's like, "Oh, okay, I get it. Hey guys," so it's funny to see. I couldn't believe he actually said it. Like the way he did it was like, "Oh, he just straight out admitted the FBI came to him and told him to watch this story, and then they watched it and actually censored it, but just not as much as Twitter." It was like, "Oh, like so you guys do this? Like you're admitting like you do these things."
Okay, I have another question on the student loan forgiveness. So how much of that money do you think will get put back into the economy, which will be a bonus for all these small businesses that have to pay more in taxes because people will owe less on their student loan, so then they can put that money back into the economy?
None. I mean, very little.
You think so?
I mean, definitely not immediately because you're not paying off people's student loans.
Yeah, it's only $10,000.
It's not like they have like an extra $500 a month immediately to go out there. Like maybe once it pays it off, they can introduce some of that into the economy after 5 years or 10 years. But it's like at that point, will it make a difference at all?
Right. Yeah, I think what it seems to me, and I will say, I think the Republicans got it right on this one, where they're just trying to buy votes. They're trying to do something before the midterms coming up to like give them a kick. I think that's like, because like you said, it's $10,000. Like I get it, like that's a lot of money, but it's not like $10,000 in their pockets. Like the stimulus checks, like I bet a lot of them went into, circulation because it was cash. But paying, like, if you own $60,000, well, great. Now I owe $50,000.
Circulating up people's noses.
Hey, everybody needs to eat, Tony. Even your drug dealer. But that's like, that's the thing. It's like what's it gonna do? That's why you look at like what is this? What is this going to do?
Yeah, buy votes and create more divide.
Yeah, because typically, because you look at even the statistically, you look at this, college educated voters are by far more likely to vote Democrat, right? So it could be said like this is only benefiting college educated people because obviously you're not going to have a student loan if you didn't go to college. So theoretically, like statistically, just statistically speaking, this is benefiting their voter base.
Sure.
That's obviously one very small point of that, but I just kind of realized those are facts.
Yeah. Ran out of dead voters. Now they got to.
Hey, there's some of those on the Republican side too. Those the old trailer parks. Where
I know.
Yeah, that's been.
Yeah. Why is the cutoff at like 125,000? I wonder if that's like an arbitrary number. Like if you make more than 125,000, maybe $124,999, you get it. 125? No.
Yeah, I don't know how they decide those numbers.
And do you have to have paid on your loans for X amount of payments like the other government programs were? Right. In order for them to, cancel that, you have to make 120 payments in a row or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know all the details on it, but it's.
Yeah, I'm thinking it. I'm like, I guess why does someone below 125 get it and someone above doesn't get it? Like that's the mysterious number where all of a sudden you can pay for, because what if someone lives in California or DC or New York.
Yeah, 125 ain't much.
No, not at all.
Mm.
It's kind of an arbitrary number.
Yeah, well, they did the same thing with the stimulus checks too.
I know. I mean, the same thing with that. Like, why do you?
I think if I had to guess, this is just me completely guessing at this point. But there does seem to be a general societal divide around that like 6-figure mark. That's rough, like in that ballpark. Like I
feel like maybe there used to be. I feel like in the last 3 years, maybe not.
Yeah, it's hard. We've even talked about. I think I told you about the other day. Like we've talked about it on the show too. Like during we're very fortunate through COVID as far as work. Being quote unquote essential worker, whatever. So we didn't get hurt that bad through that whole process. But like, even now, like we realized the other day, I'm like, fuck, like I'm feeling like I'm noticeably like, it's not even like I'm looking for it. It's like shit, like trying to fill the car up with gas, you go buy groceries. And it's like, we shop pretty cheap. And it's like, oh, like how am I spending this much money on eggs and bread and like meat? Forget about meat.
I have a box of meat waiting for you, by the way. Not here, but it's in. I set it aside in my freezer.
I need a refill.
Yep.
But it's like, man, like now, like from going from holy cow, we dodged a bullet to wow, like okay, we can feel this. So like I can feel people's plight. And it's like, well, what about those people that were affected by COVID too?
Yeah, they got
like not only did they,
whammy.
Yeah, they like lost their job, or they weren't allowed to go to work, or they lost their business entirely, and now they're like ground zero. And now inflation, because you hear people like taking out like home loans and stuff to like keep their business afloat.
Yeah,
and now our transitory inflation that doesn't seem to be transitory. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be transitioning anywhere, or
like, it isn't our mangy old transient inflation.
Yeah, so it's like, wow, like I can only imagine what some people are going through, like across, like,
yeah.
And how are we going? How does this whole thing get remedied? By just printing more money?
It doesn't, man. It definitely doesn't. So, have you seen some of this stuff with where people, they'll like post shots of how much they've paid on their student loans, and they would put together like an income contingent driven plan, and they've paid for 20 years, and their loans are actually more than the initial loans were. Jeez. Because of the interest.
Oh, because interest
not going to principal, and because it was based on income. And it's like, dude, holy smokes, that's. To me, man, it's like, does education really need to cost that much? And I don't know. Like, that's a genuine question. Like, maybe it is expensive to get, quality professors to get, and I think the whole book thing is bullshit with them charging that much and then coming out with the next edition of the book. And then, the next one is supposedly obsolete, even though 99% of the same text is there. Do we need these giant buildings? Could we not teach under the stars, or do we have to have, it's just, I don't know, man. It's interesting to me to see like the crazy cost of some of these colleges, $75,000 a year. It's like, that's wild. Or you look at these medical degrees, the doc that precepted me on my OBGYN, she went to a school in New York, and she was like, makes a decent salary, probably makes, I don't know, $250,000, $300,000 a year. But her student loans were like $500,000 or $600,000. And that's not even that crazy to have over $500,000 in student loans.
Yeah, for a profession like that.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, it fits the same kind of outline as the government. Or same thing you could fit into corporations. Or I've just finally, I know I'm way behind the times, just finally recently wrapped up The Sopranos. The mafia. It's all like, all it is like, it's a way, there's a structure that's built. People find a way to make money off of it. And then you start freeloading. a little bit here, a little bit there. Next thing you know, your CEO is making, $5 million a year while you're still struggling to pay your bottom dollar employees like
minimum wage,
a minimum wage or like a living wage. And then like you realize like, well, I could go work at McDonald's for $15, $18 an hour because, America can't live without their McDonald's, and the profit margin is enough where they sell, enough product, whatever. But then you have like these businesses that can't find good employees because they can't pay them enough to make it worth their time to put extra effort in. So then you end up with these subpar people making subpar wages and no reason for them to not be subpar.
Or people are incentivized to not work.
Right. And then you have these people at the top of these food chains that are orchestrating the whole thing, whether it be corporations or like, I don't know what some of these like how same thing with, like I said, the same with the government. Like, why do you need all these people to do these things that like you never get anything done? And you're paying these people hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
Let me hit you right now with an example. I'm trying to get my passport.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I got a letter back that basically said because my picture wasn't straight, my neck was a little bit crooked, that they needed a straight picture. So I called them and I said, hey guys, I can get you a straight picture, but that means either the camera's angled or I'm tilting my head because I'm crooked. I've got a condition known as spina bifida. It's very mild, but my neck's not straight. And they said, oh, okay. They said, well, let's get a letter from your doc. Send it in, explaining everything. So I sent it in and I called them after I sent it and I said, hey, I just want to make sure that you guys received the letter.
Right.
And the guy said, did you get on the website? And I said, I didn't get on the website. And he said, did you get on the website? And I said, I don't know what website you're talking about. So he told me, and I said, dude, I'm not asking about a status update. I'm just asking if you received my letter. And he said, I can't tell you that information. You have to get on the website. And I said, why does your job even exist?
Right. Why am I talking to you?
Why does your job even exist? And he ended up hanging up on me.
Yeah.
I mean, it might have had something to do with the fact that I called him a beta cuck, but.
Damn, tell me that's no way to get things done.
Oh, nothing was getting done anyway. So, no,
but did you get on the website?
I did. I got on the website.
See, he got what he wanted.
Yeah, it told me the exact same thing he told me. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, so it's like what do we like? Yeah, all these like interns and stuff I just saw now. Like, what was it recently? Like, the government interns are now like allowed, building unions and stuff. So what do you guys do? Like, the only times I've ever like
to even deserve a union. Like,
yeah, like.
You got to do something first.
Yeah, hell, even like the members of Congress and shit barely do anything. They take 3-week vacations and like
go on strike because they don't get paid enough. And
yeah, like what do you mean? You get paid. You're a better stock trader than most of Wall Street. Like, what? So you just see like all these like layers of just wasted money. There's so much wasted time.
Profligacy at its finest.
Yeah, and that's exactly. I think that's the bad thing. Like I said, that's we put that up in the negative column for capitalization. A little rough today.
I think my other component to that, man, is like the student loans. What's that?
Capitalism.
Yeah. And I get it. It's not like, hey, if you qualify for it, if it's like the stimulus and they give it to you, but like, I think just morally, like, isn't there some sort of a compass where you're like, I don't want someone else to pay for my shit. Like, this is an obligation or a burden that I took on, and I'm going to be responsible for this debt. And I know the argument is like, well, they were young and they didn't understand. And it's like,
yeah. So was I when I got my first car loan. And then years later, I'm like, fuck me.
Yeah.
Like,
or kids or marriage or, well, you're going to pay for the kids, or you're going to, like, you might not have had all the information, but are you ever going to have all the information?
Yeah, when do you start being held responsible? Like
30,
40, 50?
Super slippery slope.
Yeah, like we can send these kids off. We can send these kids off to die overseas in the military at 18. Like, we're okay with that for warmongering. Like don't get me wrong, there are some things that our military does that obviously keeps it safe, and I don't like besmirch any of the people that go to the military to do that, but like the people pulling the strings, like sending these, kids to die in areas that, because, they're going to start trading their oil in something other than US dollars.
Yeah. I think my other thing too is like what sort of good habits does that instill? Like if your kid bought something and spent their $10
and then they get it back.
Yeah, exactly. And they were like, "Oh, I wanted something else." And you were like, "Well, you should have either bought something else, made a different decision, or you're going to have to work hard to save up to get that other thing." Nah, you know what? Here's $10 more. What did you learn? That I'm just going to continue asking for $10 more. You gave that mouse a fucking cookie, and now it's going to want a glass of milk, and then it's going to want some champagne, probably a mansion.
Yep. Why not? Right? If you're going to keep giving them to him. And that's the same thing with, we actually had that discussion today about, it kind of fits in with past probably 15 years is when it's kind of the whole participation trophy thing. But guess what? That life does not give you an award for just showing up.
It'll give you a steaming pile of shit. That's for sure.
Yeah.
No, but I do think that at some point, like, can we take a look at what these kids are learning their junior and senior year of high school and educate them on something that's actually going to be pertinent to their life? Like,
instead of college?
Yeah, like what happens
for life,
when you
college.
do take out a student loan? What is interest? How does interest...
Zero financial education.
You know what I mean? There's got to be something. Just giving people 10 grand if they fit their very specific criteria may help a few people, but why not throw in an education piece that's going to help millions of people make decisions down the road? You know what I mean?
Yeah, because then you're not able to be controlled.
Yeah.
I don't
If you give a man a fish, he's going to come back for another fish. We don't want to teach him to fish. Otherwise, he's independent.
Yeah.
It's so weird to me.
Yeah,
but you're not the puppeteer, so
that's where the line is. It's funny with me. I don't know. I like to not get too crazy, because that's another like conspiracy thing. It's like, all right, the government's trying to like control you, so these things are all in place purposefully, and this is why they do these things, and why they have like government assistance, because they can, there's so many different topics like you could touch on that. Like the government is intentionally like keeping people in poverty and all these things because they depend on them. Like, I don't know if it's quite intentional. I think sometimes people are just dumb, and even more so, I mean, the people that are in power. So they're just like doing these things because they can, like the California homeless situation,
where we just keep dumping money at it, money every year,
because there's people making money on it.
Yeah.
So like, well, they're not. Why would you? You're not going to pay somebody to fix the problem, because then they're going to work themselves out of a job. Like. Yeah, the education piece is massive, though, I think. I mean, like you said, you were going to say something about, I felt like there was some kind of financial education.
Yeah, so someone did say, I think they were on the show, and they said that they do teach them a level of financial education in some schools. Because I remember bringing that up a long time ago, and I'm like, why aren't we teaching kids, like you were saying, about interest rates, or about, APRs, or about adjustable rate mortgages, or about just anything, even small investing, or just a budget. A freaking budget.
Yeah. Well, that's what I remember. The only thing I ever remember from school was, I think they called it like junior achievement or something like that. But it was like in like 7th grade.
Oh,
You're teaching me about the stock market and shit. Like, I just turned 36 and I just figured out the stock market in the last 5 years. Like, you're going to try to tell me you're going to give some 12-year-old or, what were they, 13, 14, whatever at that age or that grade, like about the stock market and like, we're not even like worried about balancing budgets or like loans. Like, no, we're gonna get in the stock market today, kids. And they're like, what? Like, why?
But that could go back to what you were saying about controlling the people. Like, they don't know what they're investing in.
Yeah, but just put your money. You need to put your money.
There you go. And who does it benefit?
Give it to BlackRock.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where a shit house of my retirement is. Every single time I look at like my retirement, like my 401k, I'm like, son of a bitch, fucking BlackRock. Well, keep making me money, I guess, but it perpetuates that cycle. But it's like, what else am I but like to your point, Cass, like we should be doing those things in high school. Like when I was in high school and I was like, hey, I'm not going to college. Like, I don't need to take these classes. And they're like, no, you need to take them anyways. For what? When you go to college. I'm like, fuck. Like, can you teach me like how not to like waste all my money on beer and pizza rolls at 19? That'd be great. Like,
dude, it literally goes, I've said that so long, man. Instead of kind of, you know, taking all these classes to prepare kids for college, why would you not prepare them for life? And you could prepare them for both.
Yeah, but both is fine.
Prepare them for life first. Like,
because that's going to happen. For sure.
Yeah, you ain't stopping that if you're still breathing. So, oh man,
yeah, I don't know. And like, I don't think necessarily everyone needs to go to like a trade school or anything like that. Like, not everyone needs to be a plumber. We need, you know, corrupt politicians too.
We don't.
Yeah, it balances it out though. How can you have good without evil?
We've had enough evil that good can sustain for a long time without any more evil.
Yeah, you think so? Okay.
I know so.
Okay. I'm cool with that. What if the moon is a Death Star, though?
Come on, moon.
Bring it on.
Come on, moon.
But if it was made of cheese, would you eat it?
I don't know. If it was made of barbecue spare ribs, though, for sure.
Tony, we were looking at the stars last night, and Fred's like, look, there's the scooper. That one, there's and I said, you mean the Big Dipper?
Hey, it's COVID brain fog. You gotta,
because it still scoops things.
That is true. Functionally,
yeah,
he nailed it.
See, you know how my brain works. Sometimes it goes a little too fast.
Yeah, and you knew what he was talking about, so
she
did.
Yeah, but she's known me for a long time, so I feel like sometimes my brain's just clumsy. Where like I start running really fast and then I just trip over my own feet and I just fall. Is
it clumsy, or is it that it works in chambers and like it's directing its focus to what's the most important at that time, but then sometimes it still wants to touch on other subjects?
Oh, thanks, Tony.
No. That's a genuine question, man, because I think that sometimes where it's almost like certain subjects are sharper, but I'm not devoting everything to that subject because I have so much saturation in my brain on other subjects.
Yeah, I wonder how much, like how...
Next time Fred says something that makes no fucking sense, he's going to be like, it's all the saturation, babe.
It is.
Dude, task saturation's a real thing, so...
That's true. I wonder how, like... I know there's ways that they say you can, like, increase that and whatnot, but I had a very similar experience with Lance Klein when he came on the podcast, because I could tell, like, within about an hour, I was like, oh, like, this dude... We're very different people, in a sense, but, like, this dude... The way his thought structure is very similar to mine, where it's like, all right, I got 4 things going on at the same time, and we're just going to run with all of them until like a couple of them fall off, and then it's going to branch out, and I'm going to end up all the way over, I don't know, some other place, because it's like I got so many multiple things running at the same time, and I can't do that. Maybe I need to, I don't know. It's like I never quite understood necessarily when people talked about like ADHD and those things, like not being able to pay attention.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, I think I'm beginning to understand like the concept of like how some of those people operate in their thought process, because it's like, we've talked about it with schooling and stuff. Like maybe the way their brain works doesn't need to be changed or tamed. It just needs to be honed and channeled differently.
That's that thing that I had you watch on the Paradigm of Education. Sir Ken, is it Robbins? I can't think of what his name is. But it's that goes back to that convergency versus divergency. Like, you got to find something that you want to focus on, and then they have to balance it with, well, how do we make this something that's relevant that you want to focus on?
Yeah, to make it to reach the end goal. Yeah,
I think yours is just more like excitement with so many things that you're always learning. But because I mean, you're obviously focused when you want to be focused, or you just tell yourself like, hey, I'm going to think of this one thing, and like 5 other things pop up, but you can still focus on the one thing and keep those in the background of the tertiary.
For the most part, but sometimes there is, I don't know if it's saturation or if I just don't want it to be saturated. Like there's times where if I'm working on something, like it took Cass a while to realize this, but like sometimes like when I'm like working on something, like I get so focused that like everything else is just like muted. And which is good sometimes, but like when you catch that when there's information coming at you in between those times, it's like just in one ear out the other. It's gone. Like I don't have any place for this right now. Like it's like my brain, like all the filing cabinets are out and like move. Like I don't have any place for this right now. So it's just chucked, gone. Like not to be ever recalled again, because it's just like I wonder like how the brain's pretty fascinating, like how different people like file information and like certain things you remember and don't remember, and certain things, like you said, like sometimes you grab a little piece of a memory or a thought and like you hold on to it, but sometimes like how, like why is, obviously when you're trying to remember something specific, like you store it intentionally, but like some things like people store really easily. Like Cass will remember like fucking clothes that I was wearing when we went on a date like 10 years ago, or at least like, but it's like her clothes. But I'm like, how do I don't like, there is very like, I remember like little important things here and there to me, but like some stuff is just non-existent in my brain that like we were there for. So it's like, I wonder what that makeup is for people to like, how people's brains just do that. Cause a lot of it's unintentional, right? Like you just do it. Like, I wonder why, like what, I don't know. It
sounds like something Malcolm Gladwell probably answered at some point.
That's probably true. I love his stuff too. It's different, but he's got a good voice for it too.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard him or seen him.
I've listened to a couple of his podcasts. He has a couple of good ones. I remember, was it Shanlin talked about him when he was on here?
Yeah.
And that's how I started listening to him. And he's talked about the McDonald's fries one.
Yeah.
And it was like, I listened to like a 45-minute podcast about McDonald's fries and how they started and how they changed and how they like got sued and they couldn't like fry their fries in beef fat anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, and then now we realize that it's actually a lot unhealthier for you, but they still have to do it that way and they don't taste as good. It's like, what? Like that was the best 45 minutes about fries I ever listened to in my life. It's fascinating when you realize how these things happen. Like, and you realize 50 years later, like we think we're doing something so good. It's like that we talk about, like experts are always wrong if you give them enough time.
Yeah.
So it's like, you think we're doing something super altruistic or beneficial or whatever it is. And then 50, 100 years later, we're like, yeah. So, like that whole attaching leeches to your body and like cutting you open and like just bleeding you out, that actually doesn't get rid of sickness in your blood.
Yeah.
Oops.
Unless you have polycythemia, and then it might.
I don't know. What's that? That's a new one.
Overproduction of red blood cells. So hemoglobin and hematocrit levels are high, which can drive up blood pressure and put you at an increased risk of stroke. So
how many people you think back in the 1800s had that?
Like none. They're probably all anemic, actually.
That's probably true. They got scurvy.
I think that may have been a little bit before that.
Probably. What was that? 1600s?
Probably.
No citrus. I don't know. It's been an interesting 2 years though. I hope.
It's one way to say it.
I didn't realize back when I was like, oh, next year's going to be a real bitch. You think that this one's bad.
Yeah.
I realized where this was actually going to go. It's one of those, I feel like I'm part of my own simulation. I'm creating it. I'm manifesting the wrong shit to the universe.
Come on. Ready Player One.
Yeah. Yeah. That's going to be, it's weird. Speaking of Ready Player One, listening to that Zuckerberg podcast, like it's really weird to hear some of these people talk about some of their ideas.
Did he ask him about the barbecue sauce?
No, he didn't.
Damn it.
That would have been a good one. That would have been hilarious. So, Mark, what's up with the barbecue sauce? Yeah. Hilarious. Oh, fucking barbecue sauce. He's so weird. I don't know.
I mean, does that surprise you?
No. He's just weird. I don't know. I think he might be an alien. I think it is. But
or maybe his avatar is too advanced for us to understand.
I don't know. He's just the way he speaks too. It just seems really weird.
Like the cadence is off.
His cadence and his like tempo and like it's very
like almost like if you would learn Spanish and you went to Mexico and tried to speak it, they would know. Probably Russian. I heard Russian's pretty damn hard to learn, and they can basically pick out someone who isn't native,
even if they're fluent.
Yeah.
That's almost what it seems like. It's like, man, like you came from the Nazi bunker in Antarctica, didn't you? Because something's weird with you. And he's talking about like how he just wants like the digital, he really wants like Meta and all these like AR and VR to all be like integrated and all these different, I don't know. It's sounds very dystopian. I don't know. Let's see what happens. It's going to be, I think we're still in for a wild ride for the next couple years. At least for the next 2 years. And then probably Trump will be back in office.
Oh my
gosh. It'll be another 4 years.
Just fuel on the dumpster fire.
You know what's going to happen? I can't think of any other scenario. Biden's not going to make it. He's not looking great.
So then he's going to have to run against Kamala, or they're going to put someone else in there?
There's no way they put Kamala in there.
No, I know. That's who would they put in, you think?
I don't know. Every single time I hear them mention somebody, I'm like, that's probably not.
Are there any trans politicians that are out?
Just the Secretary of
Health? Is that what it was?
I think it is the Secretary of Health. Yeah, she doesn't look very healthy either. Just in general. Yeah, her I think she's the top ranking trans official, I believe. I don't think she would make it for presidency. Maybe Fauci quit. Fauci, you hear Fauci's quitting?
Yeah.
Or retiring? Maybe he retired so he could become president.
I thought you were going to say trans.
He's not.
He might be.
You're literally going to say maybe he quit so he can become trans. And I was like,
I don't think you have to quit.
This went really weird turn.
Maybe he could be a lizard alien for sure. He looks pretty weird. Yeah, so maybe he's going to run for president. I don't know. I just don't see anybody that's like, oh, I'd vote for that person.
Tulsi.
Yeah, maybe.
Is there anything on the radar that you saw that popped up where? Because I know you said with Crenshaw, you were like, oh no.
Yeah, Crenshaw. Well, he's made more money than Pelosi, I think, off the stock market.
No, he was
below
her.
He was below her.
She was
top.
like two people
maybe
below
he just
her.
subscribed to her.
Maybe he was just following that Pelosi trades on Twitter. Yeah. He was like, okay. Yeah, I don't know. Tulsi's weird. Like I can't figure out because she's not in like government anymore. And it's either she really, really, really cares or she's got some angle she's working because she's really in the limelight with like Fox and stuff now. So it's like, I'm trying to figure out like, I don't know. Maybe she's trying to stay relevant in order for like a 2024 run. I don't know. That would be interesting. Well, it'd be an interesting one, but there's no way that she'd ever be the Democrat nominee. Not after the way they hosed her last time.
Yeah.
But that would be an interesting one. Could you imagine the debates of Tulsi Gabbard and Donald Trump if she were like an independent nominee or something? Like, well, they don't allow independents to be on the debates either, but that would be an interesting conversation there. Donald Trump and Tulsi Gabbard going because she's smart.
Yeah,
she's good.
She's smart.
She's sharp.
Yeah. Well, dude, we saw her debate Kamala. Kamala.
Yeah,
or should I say, we saw her annihilated,
and then she became a Russian asset. Yeah, it's that would be interesting. I'd like to see that if Donald Trump runs, which he's going to for sure. I don't see how he doesn't. I hope he doesn't, but
I mean, if he didn't, who do you think they'd put in there?
DeSantis.
Yeah. Did you watch that thing on Rogan with the Innocent Project guy?
I have not yet. Not Jason Flom. It's the other guy. What is his name? Oh, I just lost it.
Well, he's not a big Ron DeSantis fan. He tells multiple stories about him. And because I'd heard a story and I'm like, man, I can't remember where it was from. And it was actually from that guy. But yeah, he had some things, which that's one person, but It was interesting to hear. So
yeah, I don't think there's anybody that would be really from either side that seems like a good front runner. Besides, like Republicans, it seems pretty easy to like, hey, it's Donald Trump or DeSantis.
Yeah,
those are the two biggest names I think that would have the most backing. But because who else are you gonna put in there? He could be like a Jim Jordan or something like that. I don't know. He's even wilder than.
Really?
I think he's even wilder than Trump. Some of the stuff he said before.
Yeah, is he Ohio?
Yeah,
I'm thinking,
he is. Yeah, he is an Ohio guy.
He had some good stuff back in the day, though. I don't know if he changed.
He has some good points, but it's overshadowed. But like it would be overshadowed by some of the crazy shit that he said.
Like what kind of crazy stuff has he said?
Just like real over the top, like hardcore, like Republican speaking stuff. That's like, like some of the crazy shit like Trump says. Like, bro, like if you just shut your mouth like 3/4 of the time, you'd probably not get be in such hot water.
Let your actions speak.
Yeah, just go and do the job. But I think he's just too egotistical to. I mean,
Trump. Okay.
Yeah. I think Jim Jordan's just a little. He's just a little. I wouldn't say extremist, but like he's real. Like he's on there. He's on that right side, real hard. And some of the stuff he says, it's like, bro, like, people just go too far. What are you gonna do? It's like that. The extreme like gathers a lot of people, but then it also distances you from a lot of people.
Yeah.
It makes you really polarizing. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting though, to say the least. Biden's made it 2 years so far.
Yep. If it's still him.
If it's still is he just like is it just someone wearing a mask or a doppelganger?
Oh, maybe, yeah, possibly. I mean, he's so infrequently in the public that
is a little weird. Well, that's how he won this campaign, so why not just keep on?
Yeah, probably because when he's tripping or falling or wrecking bikes or falling down stairs or doing something ungraceful.
Yeah, I mean, he's old. He's really old. I don't think he's there.
How old is he? 78?
I don't know how old is. I was thinking 76, something like that.
I mean, dude, Trump's like 74, and that dude was practically doing cartweils.
Yeah. He said, I saw him the other day. He's like, he's 79.
Yeah, I thought he was 78. Yeah.
He was it's fucking Trump. His clips are hilarious. He's like, I feel great. I'm a young man. I'm youthful. I'm feeling awesome. And then I saw a clip from someone brought it. I don't know where I saw it, but it was an old clip of when he went to see Kim Jong-un in North Korea. Yeah. Fucking hilarious. He's like, look at the cameras. He's like, you guys getting our good sides, making sure we look thin and beautiful and wonderful. And like, he like pans over to Kim Jong-un. He's just staring at him like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it just looks like a bloated manatee.
A bloated manatee.
Yeah, not just a manatee.
No, he's a bloated one. Okay. Yeah. Oh, man.
Just like plus 100 pitting edema everywhere.
I think he lost some weight recently. That's what I heard. I think
you push that on his skin and it comes back in.
Yeah, just
in 2 days instead of 3.
Oof. He doesn't look healthy. I'll give you that. No one does these days. Well, maybe I don't feel it. Maybe that's what it is. Oh, I don't know, Tom. It'll be fun. It'll be interesting. We got some interesting folks lined up as well.
Yeah.
Some big things, maybe. Possibly. I don't know. What do you think, Tone?
I don't like the student loan thing. That's what I think.
Yeah, I just wonder what they're going to start spending more money on soon.
Yeah.
It's all just... I don't know how we come out of it.
Catastrophe.
Unfortunately. It's usually about the only way, right? Wipe it clean and start fresh. Maybe with Bitcoin.
Maybe.
I think it's I still think it's my only vote. The only vote out. My dollars aren't doing so great, so
who's are?
Yeah.
Unless you're Pelosi.
It's true. multimillionaires. I can't quite fathom those numbers. Just have billions of dollars floating around just to. What's Pelosi going to do with that? She's old too. I got to pay those legal bills for her husband, I suppose.
All those Deweys.
Yeah, that's scary. And I don't mean to would it be to be ageist, but 70 plus years old with a DUI is not like, you probably shouldn't be driving at night either anyways.
Yeah. Park your octogenarian ass right meow.
Yeah. Like old people driving at night scare me enough, let alone, and you're hammered too. I think the cop handled it. Did you see the video that was released? They released the video.
Oh, they finally did?
Yeah. And he was going to have him do the sobriety test, and like he could barely stand. And he was like, well, sir, he's like, I don't feel comfortable doing the field sobriety test because, you're not really stable, and I don't want you to fall. And that's not really the goal of this. So
yeah.
we're going to skip that, and we're just going to take you to jail. It'd be so bad because, they'd get sued.
Oh,
Pelosi's husband breaks a hip
yeah.
doing a DUI test, and that's it. End of show, folks. I don't got anything else, Tone. It's one of those days. I will say this. All of the things with the loans and all that stuff that's been happening, we need to have more of those root cause discussions. Kind of like how you mentioned earlier with Cass with the system. Like, if we're not educating these people to make good decisions, and if you're not educating your kids to make good decisions, loans and financial, things, then what's the point? It's all gonna. I think I saw Sagar and Jetty shared a thing where they said, I think it was before it happened. They said, like, even if they knock off this money, like, we're going to be right back in the same position in 5 years. 5 years.
Dude, we need to establish a herd immunity of common sense is what we need, so that it perpetuates on to the next generation.
That's tough.
That's impossible.
It is. Too busy TikToking.
I mean, I would push back on that and say that I don't know if understanding student loans and the fuckery that comes with them is even common sense. I feel like that's definitely something that needs to be learned and isn't just known. So I would push back on that a little bit.
For sure. But hey, I'm taking I'm going to go to college for 4 years, and I'm going to take, and it's going to be $50,000 a year.
And I'm going to get a job that pays $20,000 a year. I would say that is common sense.
Yeah, just the basics of going, I'm going to owe $200,000 after this is all said and done.
Is that a sound investment?
But are they, is somebody telling them, hey, your goal once you get this degree is this job? Have you looked to see, that is common sense, but is someone telling them, like, right now you can figure out how much, on average you would make starting out with this degree or this diploma or, this job title. What is that going to look like? Do you plan on having an apartment? Do you plan on having a house? Do you plan on still living with your parents? Do you have some roommates? Like, my parents had me do that, but if they hadn't, would I have thought about that? Like, maybe, I don't know. I went a very practical route and didn't have a whole lot of student debt, but I still wasted a year at community college because I didn't know what the fuck I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Getting those, general classes out of the way, but I still had to pay a couple $1,000s. But I still live, I lived at home. But so I'm not like defending these people that want all of their stuff paid, because like I lived at home and I went to community college. I didn't get to go experience college because I chose not to, because I didn't want to rack up thousands of dollars in debt and not know what I wanted. Like, I shouldn't have to pay because they didn't know what they wanted to do and they went to, a college. And so they had to pay a lot more. But I'm just saying that if someone's not educating these kids or letting them know, like, this is the reality.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? And I don't think that everyone should have to go to school for like the practicality. I think I didn't even like think about dreaming about what job, because I wanted a job that had really good insurance so I could pay for my own medical stuff. Like, that's not fun. There's no passion in that. Like, and I don't want our kid to have to go and think of the most practical thing. You know, I want her to go do whatever she wants to do and enjoy it, but understand that you have to be able to afford it. You have to be able to pay your bills, right? You have to get a job that's going to bring in enough income for you to survive, regardless of how that looks. So like it's hard because I can see both sides. Like,
well, I think it boils down to like what you mentioned earlier, Tony, about the basically having consequences for your actions and learning that young and owning it. You know, if I spent $10 and I wasted it, well, if somebody comes along and says, "Oh, well, I feel bad for you. Here's $10." Well, then there's no lesson learned there, because what's like, so like, I guess that's what I mean with the whole participation trophy thing. Like, as a society, like, we have to like stop just letting your kids think that like life is great. Like, you know, you can get whatever you want, and if not, take a loan out for it. Like, we're gonna buy this house that we can barely afford, and then in 10 years, now that we can actually afford the bills, well, now I'm gonna take a mortgage out again, a second mortgage out, so I can buy this fancy car that I want, or this, that, whatever. It's like, well, no wonder and then, well, my student loans, I don't have to pay them off for like 20 years. So people just keep on racking up debt because they've never, were taught as a child, like the consequences for your actions and having to own them. So like when you get bailed out, just like corporations, the banks and the automotive industry years ago. Well, the more you bail people out.
You mean Chevy and Dodge?
Right. Like, what?
Or GMC.
Yeah. Like what, without the consequences. And that's what I get. The point was that the participation trophy is, we're teaching these kids, even like literally from the moment they're able to understand, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. We're taking that away from them.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. So like, there's no consequences for going out there and like, not like, you don't even get to feel bad for not practicing harder than the other team. Like, you know why they beat you is because they tried harder, or maybe they were just better. So now you have to realize where are your weak points. Like, when you take a loan out, guess what? Like, you signed on the dotted line. Yeah. Maybe you weren't educated to know exactly what, a fixed rate or a adjustable, APR or something like that is. And you got really screwed on it. Well, shit. Like, that sucks. There's people out there that swindle you.
Yeah.
And, and hide the complicated things and with other stuff. But
yeah, but aren't there always people out there that swindle you when you go to work and you pay 40% taxes and you don't know what the fuck your money's doing?
Yeah. It's like the trust level is it's realistic levels of trust and perception of the world, I think, have been eroded in our kids' eyes and the last few generations, more so than they have in the past, because there's just the benefits that we have gotten from living in America and this society have kind of pulling the wool over our eyes to how difficult life can be.
Soft times, bro. Haven't had to live many hard times.
I know. I think it's coming back around though, or at least for a lot of people. So do what you can. That's all you can do, right? Let's see what happens.
Anything else, guys?
No. Well, thanks for hanging out. I know it's kind of a random one, but we haven't just kind of hung out and talked a little while. I know I've talked to a couple people this summer, and they're like, "You guys still doing that?" I'm like, "Yeah, we just had a guest last weekend." And
yeah,
it's like, I think in the middle of summer we usually slow it down a little bit, and then around holidays it's been busy. So take a little break here and there. But there's definitely we got some weeks planned out already, and I think we're gonna have some good conversations.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. Be a party. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Thank you for joining us today. Remember, check out the website, chronic-curiosity.com, to join us at the forum, have some fun, interaction, pick you up a comfy t-shirt, or if you just want to support the show and donate, all that is on the website as well. Thank you. Until next time. See ya.